Good morning, good afternoon, and good night. Here we go with the semester 2 final review, starting with unit 5, cell division and DNA. We started with cell division talking about mitosis. We looked at some different slides. We identified the different phases: interphase, prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. With that, you need to make sure you know what's going on in each one of those stages with all of the DNA and chromosomes and what they would look like if you had to figure out a picture of one of those phases. Know which one is most common and why. Understand the cyclical nature of this cell division. Understand why cells divide, growth, and repair. So we went through a lot of stuff with mitosis, and we did a lot of work with that. From there, we went in and we talked about stem cells. We looked at how stem cells can be used to regenerate lots of different kinds of cells. We watched videos on limb regeneration and went through that kind of stuff and talked about the totipotent, pluripotent, and multipotent cells. Just the fact that they have not been differentiated yet, so you can kind of nudge them in one direction or another to become skin cells or bone marrow cells, things of that nature. From there, we went into DNA, chromosomes, and genes. We talked about DNA structure and its function and how there's just tons and tons of information on there. Understand how genes make up chromosomes and chromosomes make up DNA, kind of the process of which is biggest and which is smallest. We looked at DNA replication, in which we looked at the nucleotides, the different parts and pieces of DNA. We talked about helicase and DNA polymerase and those enzymes and their roles in DNA replication, and how the A's, the T's, the G's, and the C's would all fit together and match up, and how that is your genetic code that makes you you. Meiosis and genetics. With meiosis, we talked about how this is essentially the same as mitosis, except for it happens with sex cells. We talked about gametes and gonads, difference between diploid and haploid. So make sure you can go back and look at how crossing over is involved and what that means in terms of creating 4 unique gametes, 4 unique sex cells that can lead to unique individuals. We looked at, from there, genetics. We talked about genotype and phenotype. We did a bunch of dihydrid crosses, and we did a bunch of those with sex-linked traits as well, things like color blindness. So make sure you can go back and understand how, if I do a dihybrid cross and it's dominant and it's recessive, what that means in terms of how it might show up in its physical appearance. And then also within just the genetic code, like big B, little b, that kind of stuff. In this unit, we did not have any Schoology quizzes or tests, so you're not going to be able to see any real good multiple choice examples. But if you just kind of go back and make sure you understand all the processes that went along with this, you'll be okay. Make sure that you can do a dihybrid cross, as you'll probably have an example of at least 1 or 2 of those within a multiple choice quiz, and you would have to be able to identify, hey, if I had this dihybrid cross, what would my ratio of this genotype to another genotype be? So make sure you understand how those would look, and go back and look at some of the examples that we had done with that. Unit 7 was evolution. So with evolution, we did a lot of work right off the bat by looking at the skulls and the cavemen and the video, and we did a lot with data to establish this idea that we do have some evidence for evolution. From there, we talked about Darwin and natural selection. We looked at what he had done with the finches and this idea of natural selection just based on where they lived in the island. Their beak shapes and things like that made it so that they could work effectively. We looked at homologous versus analogous traits in terms of evidence for evolution. We looked at like wings and things like that, and how that looks similar to hands and things of that nature. So make sure you understand the difference between homologous and analogous traits. We talked about artificial selection, which was that Russian fox video, if you remember, where they kind of bred them for either to be more tame, and how other traits came out from that. And then they actually did the kind of messed up other version of that, where they bred a lot of them to be even more aggressive. and those were the ones where we're just attacking the cage. So that's the artificial selection, looking for traits and predicting what they're going to be. And then we did a lot of other stuff with evidence for evolution as well. We looked at some of the fossil records, as well as some of the homologous and analogous trait stuff. So kind of go back and make sure you understand some of the differences and similarities between some of the things that we did there, as well as some of the steps for natural selection. Remember, we did the little activity with the cut out holes of paper and those fuzzy goggles and things like that. So look back at those steps for natural selection as well. Unit 8, biotechnology. This was really short. Understand what biotechnology is and this idea of genetic engineering modification. If you remember, we made the E. coli and kind of stuck some stuff in there and had to be really careful. And then we kind of bred some bacteria. So this was kind of quick. This was just a 1 week thing, but just kind of remember what biotechnology is. All right, Unit 9, ecology. Heavy vocabulary with this. So a lot of terms in this one, right? So just kind of starting with ecology, understanding when we did those posters, the difference between a biotic and an abiotic factor, and then looking at from species up to biosphere, kind of starting small and getting big. Difference between autotrophs and heterotrophs and their place in food webs and then in food chains. And we looked at that quite a bit. Difference between producer, consumer, scavengers, and then where they fit within trophic levels, how to make a food chain or a food web, what the arrows mean, right? They're following the direction of the energy. Remember that we lose energy a lot, and why that is has to do with just that metabolism, right? What the energy is being used for. We did a lot with biomes, so kind of make sure that you might be able to go back and recognize some of the different features of some of those different biomes as well, particularly maybe the one that you did for your project. And then last, the one that we're currently working on, Unit 10, make sure you know what taxonomy is, the kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Understand that binomial nomenclature, be able to do a dichotomous key, or at least understand what a dichotomous key is. And then make sure you understand some of the different parts of the circulatory systems and some of the stuff that we've been looking at with that. Not a whole lot of time with this one either, but just be able to kind of go back and look at some of the things that we had done with that. This one should be most fresh in your head because it's the one that we've done most recent. So remember, go back and look at any and all tests and quizzes, all of those multiple choice type things that you can find, and look through them. Go through them with a fine-tooth comb. Look at questions that you had missed the first time. Even if you took it twice and got it right the second time, go back and look at both attempts if they're there, and make sure that you understand questions that you had missed once, so you can make sure that if they show up again in similar ways, that you don't miss them again. It's been a great year. Good luck.